The dining hall gleamed under golden chandeliers. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight, reflecting 1,000 tiny stars. Silver platters held roasted meats and delicate pastries. Rich tapestries lined the walls, each stitch a testament to luxury and power. Officers entered in silence, aware of the unspoken rules. Every step, every bow, every glance could be judged. Every gesture measured. Stalin sat at the head of the long table, his posture calm, but his eyes sharp as a hawk. He didn't speak at first. He simply observed. Each officer fidgeted in their seat, their nerves taut, sensing the tension beneath the opulence. "Dinner is served," he said finally, his voice soft, deliberate. The room relaxed slightly, but only briefly. Conversations were cautious, polite, and perfunctory. Even laughter was measured, a whisper of sound swallowed immediately by the weight of the room. And then it happened. A glass tipped. A crimson liquid spilled across the pristine white tablecloth. Silence fell. Even the chandeliers seemed to pause. No one moved. No one dared. All eyes turned to the man who had caused the spill. Stalin's gaze lingered, a shadow of attention that could crush a man's confidence in a heartbeat. "Did you see that?" he asked quietly, though everyone could hear. A careless hand, a thoughtless act. The officer who had spilled the drink froze, every nerve on fire. The room held its breath, knowing that in Stalin's world, a minor accident could be far more dangerous than any battlefield mistake. And somewhere in the corner of the room, Stalin smiled. A thin, subtle curl of his lips. Not a smile of humor, but of control, calculation, and cruel anticipation. The room was still, but the air had grown heavier. Officers shifted in their seats, careful to avoid any movement that might attract Stalin's gaze. He watched. Every flick of a hand, every twitch, every glance was recorded in his mind. The spilled drink was no longer a minor accident. It had become a test. "Careless," he murmured, almost to himself, eyes narrowing on the man who had caused the spill. Even in the smallest things, weakness reveals itself. The officer's hands trembled as he lifted his napkin to blot the stain. His heart pounded. Every breath felt loud. Every flicker of movement under Stalin's eyes was a risk. Around him, the other officers spoke in hushed tones, barely audible. Each word, each cough, each smile was measured against the dictator's presence. Even the clink of silverware seemed amplified, echoing through the room like a warning. Stalin's gaze moved from one officer to another, calculating, observing. "Do you understand," he said finally, "that a single act, a single motion, can undo everything?" The man who spilled the drink swallowed, trying to steady himself. He realized that this dinner was more than a meal. It was a stage, and he had just stumbled into a scene with deadly consequences. A faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed Stalin's lips. He was patient, calculating, waiting to see the reactions, the fear, the missteps. And in that moment, the officers understood something chilling. In Stalin's world, every action was watched, and even innocence could be punished. Dinner continued, or at least it pretended to. Laughter returned, but it was hollow. Words were spoken, but no one truly listened. The air was charged, fragile, like a violin string stretched to its breaking point. Stalin hadn't moved for several minutes. He sat perfectly still, his hand resting lightly on his glass, his eyes locked on the officer who had spilled the drink. That stare, quiet, expressionless, endless, was worse than any shouting. It was the stare of a man deciding whether another human being was worth breathing another hour. "Tell me," Stalin said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Are you nervous, comrade?" The officer's throat went dry. He forced a weak smile. "Only honored to be here, Comrade Stalin." A murmur of polite chuckles rippled through the table, but died instantly when Stalin didn't join. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low, almost conversational. "Honored? Then why the trembling hands?" The officer's pulse raced. He didn't dare look up. He could feel every eye on him, waiting to see how this scene would end, or who would survive it. "A man who trembles over a drink," Stalin continued, "may tremble under pressure. A man who cannot control his hand may not control his loyalty." The officer's lips parted, but no sound came. There were no right words, only traps hidden in sentences. Stalin held his gaze a moment longer, then slowly leaned back, sipping from his glass. He didn't say another word, but his silence spoke volumes. The others avoided looking at the trembling man. Each of them thought the same thing. It wasn't about the drink. It was about power, fear, control. And tonight, Stalin had reminded them who commanded all three. The dinner ended as it always did, with polite toasts, nervous laughter, and the faint sound of footsteps echoing down marble corridors. But the man who spilled the drink didn't return to his quarters that night. Two guards approached him quietly as he left the hall. "Comrade, the General Secretary wishes to speak with you." He nodded, trying to mask the tremor in his hands. Perhaps, he thought, it was just another warning, another test. They led him down a narrow corridor, one that did not lead to Stalin's office, but toward the lower halls. The air grew colder, the lamps dimmer, the footsteps behind him heavier. He tried to speak. "Comrades, perhaps there has been—" A sharp command silenced him. Moments later, the corridor was empty again. No sound, no struggle, just silence. Upstairs, the table was being cleared. Officers chatted in forced tones, pretending not to notice the missing seat. Stalin remained at the head of the table, a cigarette between his fingers, eyes fixed on the empty chair. "A steady hand," he said softly, exhaling smoke, "should not spill what is given." No one responded. The meaning was clear. The man who spilled the drink was gone, erased, forgotten before the plates were even cold. The others sat in perfect silence, afraid even to swallow too loudly. Stalin leaned back, the faintest smile on his lips, not of cruelty, but of satisfaction. Another example made. Another reminder written in silence. The lesson was complete. Morning light crept through the high windows of the Kremlin. The dining room was spotless again, as if nothing had happened. The white cloth gleamed, the glasses shone, and the chair that had stood empty the night before was quietly removed, never to return. No one spoke of the man who had spilled the drink. His name vanished from rosters, his belongings reassigned, his memory erased as efficiently as the stain on Stalin's tablecloth. That evening, Stalin dined again. Different officers, same table, same perfect order. Every man sat a little straighter, moved a little slower, breathed a little quieter. Even laughter sounded rehearsed. No one dared touch their glass without steady hands. And when Stalin raised his, they raised theirs in unison, every motion precise, synchronized, terrified. To discipline, Stalin said simply, his voice even, and to those who understand it. The toast hung in the air like a verdict. Those present smiled faintly, but their eyes told another story. The story of men who knew that survival depended on silence, obedience, and absolute control of even the smallest gesture. Stalin set his glass down carefully. He didn't need to remind them of what had happened. The lesson was already carved into their minds. A spilled drink was no longer a mistake. It was a symbol, a warning that under Stalin, perfection wasn't expected. It was demanded. And somewhere, as the dinner continued under the glow of chandeliers, Stalin smiled again. A quiet, content smile, not of happiness, but of power. Because in the Kremlin that night, every man at the table trembled inwardly. And that was exactly how Stalin wanted it.